Brian, go ahead.
I think Trump world's jealous of the joy right now. There's so much anger coming from Trump's speeches. Joy is real and it's important. People can make fun of it and say focus on the policy. But if you ask political scientists and psychology professors, they'll tell you the emotions matter in politics.
Yes.
Sometimes they matter a lot more than the policies. And that's, I think, the big story this week.
Boy, that really is the big story, isn't it? And we're going to find out in November what matters the most. It is funny, though, to watch the media campaign become reality for so many people. Joining me now, Steve Krakauer. He wrote a book on a lot of this stuff with the media and how this starts sucking up the power. The book is called Uncovered, highly recommended. Okay, Steve, it's crazy to watch the media manufacture reality for people, but that is what they do. I believe that Kamala Harris' bounce in the polls is real and media created.
I think it is absolutely as well. And it's funny, my frenemy Brian Stelter makes somewhat of a good point, even though I don't think he intentionally does so. I do think emotion matters a lot in politics. And I do think that it's particularly in presidential politics, even more than any other race. Senator, governor, local elections, you vote on policy, much more than who you vote for when you go step in there every 4 years to vote for president. And so I do think that emotion and how that candidate makes you feel does play a factor for a lot of voters. And I have to say, as you mentioned, manufactured, it is totally artificial, this joy campaign that's being waged for Kamala Harris. She was not the nominee, not the pick of anyone who voted in the primary process. She got 0 primary votes, both in 2020 and in 2024. She was anointed to this position. And why did she do so poorly in 2020? Why did she have to kind of be like Jimmy rigged into this process? Because she's not popular, because she does not stir emotion naturally. You have to rely on people like the Brian Stelters of the world, the media, to install that feeling in people.
Steve, you know a lot of these people. You really, really have an insider's knowledge of the media and how it works. So explain this to me. We've watched this so many times. The media pretend as if they're defenders of democracy. They've called themselves firemen. They've compared themselves to our troops and Navy SEALs. That's obviously how so many of these people see themselves, as being warriors for the cause. But then at the drop of a hat, they switch gears and they suck up to all the people in power and campaign on behalf of Democrats at all times. How do they connect those two things?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple things at play. First of all, you're right. I don't know if we've ever seen such a whiplash, a 180, and that really just this perfect encapsulation of all the terrible, instincts of the media of 2024 than really just these last 2 months. Look at how they covered up the way of Joe Biden's cognitive decline for so long, leading right up until that debate. And then snap of a finger, that debate changes everything. And then all of a sudden they put in their journalist hat. Suddenly they open up their notebooks, all the investigative journalism and all those instincts come back together, and they essentially railroad the guy, use reputational blackmail in conjunction with the Democratic elite, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, to get him out of power. And then as soon as they put Kamala Harris back in there, well, suddenly we're no longer interested in being journalists anymore. So I think it is a perfect microcosm right there. And I think it's a symptom of this moment that we're in. It wasn't always like this. There was lots of complaints I think you could make about the media of 2008 and 2012. But by and large, the people that were occupying those establishment media newsrooms wanted to do good journalism. They wanted to. They were biased. They were, left-leaning. They had lots of other faults. But when they sat down, they wanted their audience to trust them. No, that's not the truth anymore. No, now they think that there's this bigger, higher calling. There's this existential threat of Donald Trump. And frankly, they've got a lot of people online on social media who are going to yell at them if they try to do good journalism, and who are going to praise them if they decide to just go and put on their little, we're going to fight for democracy hat and try to, go against Donald Trump and elect his opponent.
Is there an age component to this, Steve? And feel free to refute that if there's not. But I've often thought this, as this younger generation of Democrats come up and they become politicians and comms directors and media people at CNN, they're much more radical, far to the left than even say, Nancy Pelosi and her generation, they were much more pragmatic. Is it an age thing as well? Is this kind of the window to the future because they're younger and more crazy?
Yeah, Jesse, I'm a kind of a self-hating older millennial in some ways. I think that millennials in particular, I think that generation, and I'm almost I feel like I'm aged out of millennial. That's really the sweet spot of terrible journalism, if I have to kind of put my finger on it. I even think we're getting a little bit better with some of the younger generation in Gen Z. But I got to say, the people that have grown up on Instagram and on Twitter and on Facebook, even before that, who put everything out there, or just oversharers, who rely so much and just spend all day on extremely online, spend all days looking at their phone and scrolling and swiping and have no time for actually touching grass and talking to real people. Yes, I think that this is our worst generation of journalists because they are so far afield of what the actual job should be. Listen, a journalist's job is not to be liked. Frankly, if you're doing your job well as a journalist, you should be disliked by most people. You're annoying. You're annoying. People like, just go away. Stop bothering me. That's what you should be. You should be a gnat. You should be annoying to people in power. But for so many people, they want to be liked and loved and praised. And that is a terrible instinct for a journalist.
Steve, I'm going to play a little clip. I'm sure you've seen it. You probably already talked about it, but it's a little man on the street segment of people voting for Kamala Harris, because I have a question I want to ask. Here it is.
Today, we're trying to find out from the attendees what Kamala Harris's greatest accomplishment has been as VP.
I mean, honestly, I'm not too into politics. I'm just here for the vibe.
Becoming the first female vice president.
So becoming the VP is the best accomplishment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Being a good person.
Being a good person?
Yeah. She's I don't know. She seems really good for women.
Steve, so I know we touched on the emotion thing earlier, but when you look at the campaign they're running, hiding under a desk, campaign of joy, these things like that, they're trying to see if they can get elected running a campaign based on nothing. And I say the Democrats are making a calculation that now they've dumbed down and demoralized so many Americans, they don't think they have to run on anything. Is that true?
Yeah, in some ways, I appreciate the honesty by some of those people out there. I'm here for the vibe. Oh, she seems like a nice person. Well, okay, sure. I mean, if that's how you feel about it. And I think you're right. We've got this moment, Jesse, where we've got this very condensed campaign. We've got like 70 days left until Election Day. Kamala Harris had less than 100 days as the actual nominee. There's no scrutiny. There's no time for, actually real vetting. I mean, look at how she just picked a VP that no one really knew much about, and that hasn't really worked out so well for her. So yes, I think they can believe they can get away with it. And part of the reason I think they can get away with it, look at 2020. Look at what happened with the Hunter Biden laptop story. That is so crucial to understanding. The reason why the media stayed away from that story in 2020 is because they felt burned. They felt guilty about how they covered the Hillary emails in 2016. You think they're going to go and start to do some scrutiny on Kamala Harris in 2024? It's not happening. She's going to coast when it comes to what the majority of the media does here and think that they can get away with it. And the voters are only responding to that.
Steve, you wrote an op-ed for The Hill talking about an October surprise. I got to be honest, as soon as I read it, I thought, oh, crap, I didn't even think about that. But now I could see it. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I think that, we saw how fairly easy it was for the media establishment and the Democratic establishment to work together. And in a span of about 3 weeks, change Joe Biden's mind from saying, I'm staying in no matter what, to I am out of this race. And we've heard reporting that Nancy Pelosi was one of the people who said, listen, we've been doing this the easy way so far, but if you don't leave this weekend, if you don't announce on Sunday, you are going to drop out of this race, we're going to start to do it the hard way. And I think that that's only half the way there. He is the president in name only these days. Joe Biden isn't doing much of anything. And there is another lever that they can pull, and that is push him out of the White House entirely. And I think that that's absolutely a spot that they could go. If you make Kamala Harris the president and have her in there, you can give Joe Biden a little 2-week celebration of his life, just like we saw at the DNC. You can put Kamala Harris in that role, let her be President Harris, maybe manufacture a little mini crisis for her to show how presidential and strong she is. I think that could help boost her even a little bit, even among a very small faction of the population, which is really all it might take to win this election. So President Harris in October, I would not rule that out.
Yeah, I could see it. The book is Uncovered. Highly recommend you go pick it up. Steve, my brother, thank you. I appreciate you. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.